Hi everyone. So I hope you all had a nice break and that all you data lovers are ready for our first data discussion. And we will continue with how to start an AI startup. Our panelists today are Hajdi Cenan from airt.ai, Filip Panjevic from ydrive.ai, and Darko Jovisic from Robotiq.ai. Developing any kind of entrepreneurial venture is a challenge for itself, and building an AI startup in Southeastern Europe may be just a small addition to these tasks. In this inspiring discussion, you will get a chance to hear how did our panelists end up in AI startups and what does your artificial intelligence startup do? What is the process from idea to realization of an AI startup? And what are the biggest costs of running such a startup? And where did they find the funds for it? We will also want to hear some lessons learned in the process. Now, let me welcome the panelists and start with one question for each one of them. So first, Hajdi, how did you come to the idea to start an AI startup and how did you end up in one?
So, hi everyone. The idea came, well, it was a process actually. It started as an education and then as a consulting project for one bank. And throughout working with them and really learning and understanding the domain, so the financial industry more, we kind of realized what the real pain points there were and realized that that project as such could be created and packaged, so to say, into a product that can then be sold to other financial institutions as well. So it wasn't that the idea came first and then we started working on it. It was kind of the other way around. I started as a consulting project and turned into a viable idea.
Okay, and can you teach us how to pronounce it correctly?
So the company name is airt. It does have AI in it, so that was one of the reasons that we chose it, but airt does have a meaning. It's originally a Scottish word, and the literal translation would be the needle of the compass. So, and the other translations are to guide, to navigate. So we are navigating our clients through the AI world.
Really great, nomen est omen.
Yes.
So Filip, let us hear you. How did you start?
Well, I mean, what any aspiring entrepreneur should tell you is probably that they saw a pain point and decided they could build a business and figure out how to do it technologically. I myself am quite a geek, and I saw a really cool tech problem, which was really, really hard. And, we decided I want to work on that. And then we saw kind of a glimpse of a potential business that could be built. So we kind of went the other way around. We saw this problem of world scale, high definition mapping, which was a problem in my domain, which was augmented reality at the time. And then we figured out, okay, well, if we solve that, that would be really cool. A, but B, it could also open up these number of potential businesses that would come out of it. And that's, how we got into it. And that's where we are now, where we have a very unique and very cool technology that we're figuring out how to productize.
Really cool. And Darko, Robotiq.ai. How did you come up with that?
Hi, everyone. So, yeah, I came up with the idea a couple of years ago. I actually got introduced to robotic process automation, which I really loved at the start because it's simple and has really clear benefits and measurable benefits for the customers. So similar to Hajdi, I was delivering projects for enterprises as a consultant. And at the same time, I was learning a lot about deep learning and machine learning, experimenting with it. And I saw an opportunity to actually merge those two because there are some challenges in the RPA space that that require actually to use AI. So actually, our startup is not our core technology is software robots, but we actually use AI to get the simplicity of designing robots, and on the other hand side, to increase the robustness of the robots so that they are more scalable and that you have to maintain them less. So that's how I ended up in an AI startup.
Great, and a really good thing to have some comparison of RPA to AI. Now we will continue with the discussion with separate questions for each one of you, and for Hajdi. AI main industries are the financial and advertising industry. Why did you choose these industries, and how do you use your solution to become 25% more efficient in advertising?
So yeah, those two solutions did not really have the same origin. They started as kind of ideas a while ago. So in the end, both became a reality. So when it comes to airt, we are more focused on the financial industry, and we are building an AI engine there that is doing the pre-processing of transactional data. The advertising project is a joint project with a performance digital marketing agency, Seek and Hit from Split. So that's kind of a separate product, let's put it that way. Well, when it comes to advertising part, so the Captain AI, our advertising product, it's simply better because it can analyze such huge amounts of data, and it is not prone to mistakes as humans are, and it does things more in real time, because the process of optimizing digital campaigns as it looks now is that you have a person who like splits the budget based on some experience on Google network and on the Facebook network. Then they, you know, go into the campaign every morning, then they look what happened in the previous 24 hours, and they try to figure out if something was good or not. And then they try to figure out if they have to, or if they should like allocate a budget from one network to another because one is performing better or not. But it's kind of doable if you have one campaign at a time, or maybe just a few. But if you have more campaigns, if you have more brands, if you have a lot of markets that you are working on. So there are some industries that are really present at the same time in so many markets, like the gaming industry, for example. So when at the same time you are having numerous campaigns, it's also kind of physically impossible to go and look at them and check them every day and really do the tweaking of the campaigns in order to optimize them and get the best possible results. So basically what happens here is that we have, again, a machine, so to say, to do that instead of a human, which does it, you know, on its own seamlessly 24/7. You don't have to really think about it. You don't have to do it manually. It will not happen that maybe you'll enter 1 0 extra and then spend an entire month's budget in a day and stuff like that. So it works better because it can analyze the data from what happened in the past, predict what will be the outcome in the next 24 hours, and based on that to decide where the budget should be allocated to, and simply, you know.
Get it. So a lot of data, a lot of problems, and we need more automation in this part to be more precise. Now, Filip, why ydrive.ai is actually dedicated to one very important part of autonomous driving, mapping and localization. Can you tell us a bit more about what do you do with this? And is it possible to use your findings in some other fields except autonomous driving?
Yeah, of course. So what ydrive is doing is building a digital twin of our world, of our universe. So we're creating this huge 3D model of the world, which is accurate, has semantic understanding of all of the details in the world, and can be updated really, really fast. Now, this is not really a new idea. I mean, you can read about it in science fiction. Tim Sweeney's been very vocal about it. Car companies have been trying to do this for a while, but what we do differently is we can do it at a fraction of a cost, say 2 or 3 orders of magnitude cheaper than anybody else, and we can update it daily, which is also a huge advantage. Now, the reason we went down this path was originally autonomous driving, because high definition maps are very important for autonomous driving. But in process, we realized there's just a whole bunch of industries that can use this today. Ride sharing, delivery, any kind of navigation. Games could use a system where they could build levels such as GTA using just a camera phone. So we found lots of application for this technology that we're just starting to explore.
Great. So driving is actually driving whatever data and information through a process where you can help with this. So Darko, back on the robots and RPA, your website front page has an interesting title, We Create Software Robots. Can you explain to our public the term software robots and what does it actually mean?
Yeah, so it's quite simple. Well, first of all, it's not a physical robot, so it doesn't have any hands or doesn't type on the computer. It's not software for robots, but actually it's a software application that can imitate humans while they operate a computer. So, we use software robots to automate the administrative work. So when you take a look at, for example, manufacturing, it's highly automated, highly efficient. And if you, on the other hand side, look at the service companies, there's a lot of administrative work today that's being done manually by humans. And actually we treat humans as robots, and they repeat the same operations day-to-day basis. So it has a lot of potential in many industries, but especially in those companies that are actually providing services, not products, and companies such as banks, insurances, telcos, utilities, stuff like that. So, but it's not limited to any particular industry. You all work, in companies, and you know that you have things that you execute on a daily basis which are repetitive. So
Yes.
it can be used in many departments.
Could you say which one of them could maybe be the greatest to use more of these robotic and software robot solutions?
Well, banks have been especially active in this technology because they do have a large back offices, and they usually have a very hybrid IT environment, meaning that they have very old technologies like IBM mainframe, green screens, from the old technology to the newest technology. And when you have such a very big IT environment, it's very hard to integrate applications, and that's why they have humans that actually have to perform these things manually. So
So a lot of manual work is actually prerequisite to be a good example of where these robotic solutions could be used.
It's better for the business case, but
each by its own. Yeah. So let's go back to creating and running AI startups and go back to Filip. There is a lot of different methodologies when it comes to developing a startup, such as business model canvas or lean startup. Did you use any specific methods in the process for creating ydrive.ai? And if so, why did you choose this path? How does it look like, this process from having an idea that you talked about to actually building an AI product? So Filip.
Right. So I wouldn't say that we used any method verbatim, as you shouldn't really use any method directly as it's defined. You should tailor it. You should pick up the underlying philosophy, basically, and then tailor it to your needs. For aspiring startup owners, founders, I would suggest Startup Owner's Manual by Bob Dorff. That's one of the books that was quite insightful for me. Now, my background is, I come from a weird background. I've spent 10 years in a corporate environment at Microsoft. And that switch from a corporate guy to a startup founder, it was quite hard for me, to be honest. The way, you know, corporate innovation is done is you basically come up with an idea, think that's going to be plausible, you go build it. Once you build it, you go and try and sell it. And that's usually what fails. In startup environments, you don't have the luxury to go and spend a ton of money and then test your idea. You really have to go test your hypothesis in smaller iterations and be ready to pivot very quickly. So that was really a new kind of methodology for me. And I think one of the books that I really recommend is the Startup Owner's Manual, because it describes this process in details.
Great. So I guess corporate experience does bring some specifics when turning to starting a startup. And now, Darko, one part of the equation is to build something based on artificial intelligence, but a completely different animal is to promote that product and find the clients for the product that will use it. So what's your advice with people who are starting to promote their AI-based products? What's your advice? How do you find these clients and resources that you need to invest to find more clients? So Darko, your view on this?
Well, I guess it depends on the nature of your company. Is it a consumer or a B2B company? So I can talk only about B2B because that's my space. And I would split the answer in two parts. So the first part is when you're starting in a company and you have the, let's say, initial version of the product, you need to somehow sell to the first clients. And in this case, I think it's important to have, you know, a network of contacts that you can directly contact and who are friendly and who are willing to, you know, test your, you know, brand new idea and take that risk. So in the first part, you really need to have some co-founders or some people that have good connections with enterprises and can, you know, call someone in a telecom and arrange a meeting and get the project. So that's the first part, but that doesn't scale very well, because if you're going to sell to each one of the clients, you're not going to be successful that much, you know. So you have to think about how can you scale quickly. So in our case, what we did is we have a partnership partner model. So we are onboarding partners from globally, and that can allow us to scale quickly, because, for example, we have a partner in South Africa who has you know, the local context, the language, the culture, yeah, and can sell much more better than me. So that's one part. And then the second part is actually to use digital marketing. You know, in this situation, I think companies are more and more open to, you know, virtual meetings and stuff like that. So use the channels that you have, the LinkedIn and webinars and these tools that can really, you know, connect you with more people than you directly know.
Great, great. So back to banking and banks, Hajdi. As I asked you before, I was curious, why did you choose financial industry as such? And there is a lot of now famous AI startups in the whole banking industry, such as Darktrace, Sift Science, Zest Finance. Still, they do cover different aspects of banking. So who are your major competitors, and how did you make this trade-off between competitors and the domain knowledge you possess?
Well, competition is usually always a good thing. So that means only that there is really an interest and need for whatever you're offering. When it comes to these startups that you've mentioned, they are in some different areas, because I mean, even though it's financial industry, but also within the industry, there are so many different areas that can be, or problems that can be solved. So one of those is, if I'm not mistaken, cyber security. The Zest Finance is even more oriented towards insurance industry than really financial industry. When it comes to us, we are kind of doing, how should I put it? We're doing one step back. So we're not really at the moment offering like end solutions that are simply used by the industry itself. We are doing the heavy lifting of pre-processing the big amount of data, and then creating an output for the data science teams within those companies that they can use and plug in their existing or new models that are really industry specific. And then they simply get much better results, because when you kind of extract all the informations that are hidden within transactions, you get so much more insight and knowledge about their clients. So they can use that in order to improve the results of their models and simply target and segment their clients much better. So basically what we are seeing is that we might even become kind of industry agnostic, because, well, given that the industry we're working in has a lot of transactional type data, because that's what we're doing. So we're actually doing the processing of transactions or transactional type of data, applying deep learning techniques on that in order to get the vectors out that the data science team can use then afterwards in different applications, different business applications that they might need. And now those business applications can solve various business problems as well. So yeah, it's like when it comes to competition, you need to find your way in, where you're going to position yourself. It also depends a lot on how you can approach a client. So it also depends a lot on sales as well, as Darko was mentioning, because, for example, we kind of also pivoted from offering the business application models to just doing the processing of transactions, because we realized there's a gap in that area. So it is a bit sometimes a trial and error process. You know, you try something, you see if it works, you see if maybe competition is offering something better or not. So if it's a competition, or if it's a space where you can get clients and where you can position yourself, or it's already a kind of a lost cause. And then you try to find your niche and get in that niche.
Great. That sounds really like customer oriented, that you are providing extra support to also the data science teams or people in that companies. But we actually now, before a really hard topic of how do you fund your startups, we actually got a really interesting question from Diren Gokani that says, how do you protect the intellectual property of your ideas at the initial stages while meeting potential clients? So who would like to answer this first? Maybe Filip.
Sure, we patent things.
What do you do?
We patent our ideas. Yeah, you have to have a patent budget in order to do that. But it really helps, and it gives you a bit of credibility. Another way to do it is probably, you know, at first, talk to clients that you kind of trust, right? When you're talking to a potential client, just ask yourself: is he gonna steal this? Can he go and build this? And then as you start to gain ground by building your product, the further ahead you are, the less you're kind of afraid of this, because everybody else, it's not just about the idea, it's about the work as well. So anybody who would like to catch up wouldn't need to start from zero as you did and then catch up. But yeah, in the very early stages, I would suggest patenting, because it also not only protects your idea, but kind of gives you credibility. If you have a patent passed, that, you know, ticks a bit of a little box that says, well, maybe this is novel. At least legally, it's novel. So people kind of take it a bit more seriously.
Great. So patents. And Heidi, what about you? How do you deal with this intellectual property and trust with customers you start to work with?
So we are always, when we're talking about that, there is nothing, we don't do patents, we didn't do any yet. And basically what we do could be replicated if someone would have time and budget to spend 2 years on it. So, you know, because that was the process that took us really to figure out all the little things that need to be done in order to build the product as such. So there is nothing really too secretive about what we do. We will talk about the techniques that we do, but the thing is why we positioned ourselves as such is that when we're talking to data science teams in banks, they usually don't have the, I wouldn't say the knowledge or the background to do the processing of big amounts of data, because those require some other techniques and some other knowledges that are usually out of the scope of data science teams. So we kind of go into that area, but also with the knowledge of what the data science teams need and what tools we can give them to improve their outputs. So that's what we did. But as I said, if a bank would want to do this, they could, but it would take them a lot of money and it would take a lot of investment, because to do it just as a project within one company, that would be simply too expensive and not profitable. But because we've done it and now it's something that we can offer to any other client, we can offer it in much more affordable way than if they would do it themselves. So when it comes to us, we don't even see them bothering them much, especially because we are targeting this medium and smaller banks, so smaller financial institutions that maybe don't even have the budgets to go into that kind of venture.
Get it. So actually kind of an exploratory way of getting to what solution you will provide, not patenting it. Okay, and Darko, now you can also answer this. How do you protect your intellectual property? But we will continue with what was the biggest costs when you were running this AI startup, and when did you find the funds? And let's talk about this financial costing with your startup.
Yeah, so regarding the intellectual property, we also didn't patent anything. And I do agree with Filip and Heidi, you just have to be ahead of the pack and constantly innovate. And especially in AI, I think, you know, it heavily depends on the data that you use. So you can apply the same neural networks or same algorithms, but if you do not have the correct data, you will get a different output. So in a sense, it's not only the technology, it's also how you create it. So so we are using, you know, that's our, you know, competitive advantage. Regarding the costs, it's a very simple answer. You know, people are 95% of the cost of running the company. And regarding where do we get the funds? Well, it's a combination of things. I think you should try to get as many sources as you can. So, for example, we got an investment as one source. Secondly, we got some state funding as well. So, you know, you can use the EU funds or local government funds. Do not, you know, it's a very cheap money. And third thing, you know, try to sell something on the market. So what we did in the beginning, we actually sold our competitors tools, and we did that to actually fund development of our product, but also to be connected with the customers and to hear what are their thoughts and their feedback on the competitor tools. So after we developed our product, we stopped, you know, selling other tools.
Get it. And an extra question. So now hearing this, would you rather have your startup be acquired or see transition to a regular bigger company? And what do you think, what are pros and cons for either of that?
I don't know. It's a very hard question. I don't, especially to see it from current perspective. But I was also working for a large corporate, as Filip. I also worked in Microsoft, and I actually sold a previous company where I worked. I was a partner there. So there are pros and cons. So if you sell the company, I've seen many scenarios where what happens is you have a culture clash, you know. So you're bought by a bigger company that has probably more corporate mentality, and you're coming from a smaller startup mentality, and that can be a really big pain, you know. You lose a lot of people that are, you know, motivated and do not fit into the corporate way of thinking. So that's one of the cons. And the second thing that I saw in Microsoft multiple times, when they bought some tool, they spent 2-3 years trying to integrate it into their existing portfolio and kind of massacre the product. And in those integrating years, you lose the innovation momentum. So no new features, you know, you lose the pace against the competitors. So these are the cons of let's say being acquired, and the pros are definitely, you know, you have a larger reach, you know, in terms of marketing and sales, and you can, you know, expand much more quickly. But, you know, so I would say, you know, you have to really think hard who is buying you, what's their corporate culture, will you fit in or not? And the second thing is, you know, what they want to do with this product, you know, and the plans for that.
Get it. So culture, definitely one thing, and the structure. But now, Filip, for your answer on this similar question of would you be acquired, I actually met some entrepreneurs last year in Belgrade, and I felt that there is not any company that they will go into. They will simply sell their startup and move to build another one. So Filip, how are you with that? If your startup could be acquired by another company, would you transition or just go on another one?
Yeah, I think that, you know, when this question comes to mind, I still, you know, fall back to being the geek in the room. I want to solve the problem, and that what drives me day to day. And the final outcome, as you know, it turns out to be exit, I don't really care about at this point. I you know, I spent most of my time just thinking how to solve it, how to fund it, how to make it last. But if I do have to think about it, I think we have potential to be huge. So my vision for the product is to be, you know, a huge platform with, you know, millions, if not billions of users. So in that regard, I see us transitioning to a more traditional company and not getting acquired.
Get it. And for the funding, how did you gather the funds, and what are the biggest costs in running it?
Right. So let me answer the costs part first. As Darko mentioned, people in this domain are very valuable. So the market price for AI and, you know, especially computer vision talent that we have a lot is very high, and you know, you can't work around that. When dealing with, you know, computer vision, large data sets, you definitely need infrastructure. So one of the costs that is not the biggest one, but we definitely feel it, is infrastructure cost. So both local and cloud compute and storage. And then finally, we also have the data collection and annotation cost, which is significant. I mean, if you're doing any supervised machine learning, which is what most of the products today do, you also have these data annotation costs, which are not insignificant. So those would basically be the three, you know, budget pillars for us, and probably any other machine learning startup. And
Great.
finally, when it comes to funding, so for the most part of our lifetime, about 1.5 years, we've been self-funded. Basically, me and my co-founder have been the sole funders. We're currently in the middle of a seed round, So we're going to transition to external investments. And you know, for the VC round, we'll see what the future holds. We haven't been as lucky with state and EU funds as which Darko mentioned, but I would also suggest that, you know, people looking for funding in this part of the world should try and exploit those.
Okay, so for the investments. And now, Heidi, your part on this, what's up with costs and how did you deal with funding?
Yeah, I can basically replicate what Darko and Filip said. So the biggest cost is people, of course, and then, yeah, the infrastructure as well. As for us, we are still rather a small team, and we have been kind of lucky, so to say, to be cash flow positive from the beginning, because we did nail some projects that are sufficient to cover our costs. And we have also been lucky with the EU funds as well. So we did get one, the so-called, what was the innovation of small, medium, newly founded enterprises, something like that in English. So yeah, we are also now in discussions with investors for a seed round, because we now would really like to scale. Because in order to scale, you do need more people, and you should get people before you get new revenues. So, you know, you kind of need to bridge the gap before that happens. So yeah, it's we've been going slowly and steady, so to say. So we didn't really rush into things. So we are very observant of our costs, and we are making sure that we are not doing some investments that might not pay off. But yeah, so we've been self-funded with the EU funding as well.
Get it. So now you all mentioned people, and people being an important factor for startup. Our audience is saying this is very interesting panel, and one of the people that asked the question actually is wondering, what's the size and structure of your teams for developing AI product? How many engineers, developers, what kind of roles? And simply to give a short overview on this. So maybe Heidi, you go first.
So for quite a long time, there were only two of us in the company, and my co-founder and business partner, so he's Davor Runje. You might have heard of him. So he's a person that can handle the tech parts on his own. So when it comes to banking projects, we, as I said, have been only two of us until recently. We've just onboarded a new developer on team. When it comes to the advertising products, as I've mentioned earlier, we've been doing that together with the Seek and Hit agency from Split, and they were in charge of the application infrastructure, so developing the back end, front end of the application, and all the integrations with the social media networks. And they were allocating part of their team to work on that project, and around 10 to 15 people, I think, altogether worked on it. So it's
okay.
It's a mix.
So a smaller, concrete team. And Filip, how about your team and the roles that people have, the size?
Yes. So our team currently is two co-founders, myself and Udian. Udian's the CEO, or I like to call him the business guy, and I'm the CTO, or the tech guy. I don't really think those C-level definitions make a lot of sense, but they're guidance in startup line. We have two full-time developers working in the computer vision domain, and we have interns. So what we realized from basically my corporate experience, is that a lot of smart students would like to do cool internships. And we have a very appealing product, so to say. So we're able to get very, skilled undergrad and grad school students who come in for 3 or 4 months chunks and do a certain part or a certain feature. And that has been very helpful. I believe like maybe 1/3 of our existing pipeline has been built by interns who have been, coming and going, and the rest was the full-time staff for free.
Oh, and that sounds fun for the students. So let's continue with you. And may I ask you to share with us one or two some funniest moments or anecdotes that occurred in the team while you were developing the whole product?
Well, I've thought about this, and I'm struggling to find something that's funny per se, but one thing that makes my team laugh all the time is when I come out of a meeting and tell them, don't ever start a company. Don't do it. There are so many parts of being an entrepreneur that are really hard and unexpected. And like, you really have to believe in what you're doing, and you really have to, be persistent and deal with tons of bullshit to get to enjoy that, very small fraction that you really like. So yeah, I tell this people a lot, like, if you want to start a company, just think about it, give it some thought. Don't do it on impulse. Give it some thought.
Okay, but that sounds similar as having a path for the PhD, or having a child, or having a pet, or whatever. So startups really have a soul of their own, I'd say. And when you start, you have to continue. So go, Darko. Similar question for the size of the team, and as an additional question, also. Let's say that a big corporation really decides to buy Robotiq, and that you decide to take that offer. With all that money on the table that will be given to you, if you had the will to start one more AI startup again, what would it do then?
Yeah, so regarding the size, so we are currently 10 full-time employees, and roughly half of the people are in the development, so they're building the product, and the other half is are on the consulting side and implementation side and the pre-sales. So I think it's very important also to balance out, the business and the technical part, and you have to sell the solution, and that's in some cases really super important if you're going to, if you don't have a big investor that can give you peace of mind for like 2-3 years. So we also use external services. So we have a lot of contractors, and for all services that are not core to our team, we externalize it. So also think about this aspect. So for example, product design, the graphical design of the product, we externalize it. We have a designer who works, when we on as needed basis. So also think about that. And regarding the second question, well, it's a very, very tough one. So I was thinking about that, and I really cannot focus on anything apart of what I'm doing today, But AI is a really cool field, and I see a lot of applications in sustainability, in agriculture and other fields. But I really cannot, as Filip said, starting a company, it's really one crazy move, and then you just cannot think about anything else currently,
Okay,
so some friends were asking me, like, if you fail, do you have some plan where you go, what do you do? And I said, I don't have a plan for anything, we will see how it rolls out.
Yeah, so it doesn't work that you have a twin startup on the side. It just have to be the right moment for the
No, you
decision,
have to
I'd say.
you have to be all in, you know.
Yes,
Otherwise it will not succeed.
get it. So back to Heidi. Philip said, "Don't do it." It sounds like whoever does it is a new competition, but developing any kind of entrepreneurial venture is a challenge for itself. So, what were some of the not funniest but toughest moments you had in airt.ai, and how did you overcome it?
Well, I dare say we were so far so good when it comes to airt. So we did not really have any very, very tough moments. Even this lockdown that happened did not affect us as much because we kind of just managed to kick off 2 projects right before. So we were simply, you know, working on them during the lockdown. So when it comes to airt, we've been okay. But I do have some experiences from before, you know, because I've also worked in a corporate world before, and I was in a corporation when the 2008 crisis hit. And then in a smaller company when the Agrokor crisis hit. So, you know, when you have situations like that, and when you feel as if you've hit the wall and you don't know where the money will come from, if your clients will be able to pay you, and then if you'll be able to pay your employees. So it's a lot of responsibility and a lot of, it's kind of burden that sits on your shoulders, and you are sleepless at those moments and those nights when you're thinking of what the next day will bring, and if you'll be able to practically survive, you know, next month and in 6 months. But the very, very good lessons out of that were that there is no guarantee whatsoever in the world. So I was in a big company that was in 2008 that was, you know, brought down to its knees. And so there was no security in being in a big system either. I was seeing a lot of my friends and colleagues being laid off because simply it had to be done. So, you know, you kind of learn to live with that uncertainty, and you kind of look at everything as a bit of an experiment. You know, if this works, great. If it doesn't, try to do something else. But the real lesson is that everything passes, you know, and things will be okay again this way or another. So just, you need to have the perseverance and patience, and you'll just, and a little bit of craziness to be an entrepreneur, that's for sure. But
Definitely.
but we wouldn't be doing it if we weren't, I guess. So
So,
just hang in there.
yeah, so to add up on that corona lockdown periods from past months, simply a question from my side. Did you experience any new ways of working you have to do if you needed to social distance with your customers, partners, or whomever you were working with? Were there any like really totally different situation that you had before this whole period? And name some. So maybe Heidi, you continue with some example.
Well, for us, I have to say it wasn't that much of a difference. So we've been working a lot of remotely even before. So when it comes to us internally, like we do have an office, but there are a lot of days that we simply stay at home, work at home or wherever. When it comes to our clients, with some, there was a bit of a, you know, getting hang of all the conference tools and making them work. So there were kind of issues there, I dare say, you know, when you start a meeting and then for the first 15 minutes, everyone's trying to connect. So
Definitely.
those tended to be the biggest challenges of all. But people kind of got the hang of it very soon. So we did not really see any disturbance in the way of us doing the work with them.
So it's actually good having a startup for AI. Yes. And Philip, you and your team, Were there any different new ways of working and collaborating with clients?
Well, we moved everything online, so where everybody's at home. For me and my co-founder, we're on different sides of the ocean, so it's always been online. For the dev team, it's been a bit of an adjustment, but everybody's actually more efficient. And I think, you know, work-life balance is better. So we'll keep it like this, you know, for as long as we need to. Regarding, you know, partners and investors, those talks were online always. We just have this one client who doesn't believe in the virus really, and he's very insistent on meeting in person. So, you know, I sometimes have to tell him, yeah, look, I'm a bit paranoid. I believe in the virus, so let's not meet this week. Maybe we can, you know, let's meet next week, and then I kind of try to balance it out. But overall, I don't think it's been that big of a deal. Also, one thing that was very interesting for us was that during the lockdowns, we were still recording data on the streets of Belgrade. So we have vehicles driving around recording data. And since there was nobody out, we got, you know, really, really good data. We didn't have people and vehicles in the way. So, you know, it was a unique opportunity for us as well to get quality data. So
definitely interesting.
Pros
yes.
and cons.
Yes, definitely a prone in this negative period for the society in one way. And Darko, for your part, we all experienced in Croatia, then all of a sudden is this Corona time, some paper stuff and manual stuff and things that needed to be done in the process in the old way was all of a sudden done digitally. Did something change in how your startup was perceived, or how did you work on talked with clients in these periods?
Yeah, so actually, you know, I think this crisis, you know, actually increased demand for our product, because now you have, you know, people are on sick leaves or vacations, or not everybody is in the office. So you have to come up with the new ways of working. So just to give you a really simple example, but really useful. So what we did for one bank is a process. So you have a corporate department, and most of the people that work are staying at home. So you have like maybe 2 or 3 people which are actually in the office. But the business didn't stop, so they have to sign some contracts and papers and stuff like that. So all of the departments sent documents to those 2, 3 people that are in the office, and they just, you know, couldn't work because they were constantly bombed with print this, print that, and stuff like that. So what we did is a really simple thing. You know, we created a small robot that actually is listening on a file share, and when they put a document there, we send it to the printer and we put the cover page, so you know that, you know, those people can go to the printer maybe 1 or 2 times per day and just collect all the documents. So a very, very simple example, but very, very useful. So yeah, one thing also we noticed is, you know, we are working a lot in the banks, and they are very conservative, you know, environments, and usually you don't get the VPN access to the bank, you know, or it's highly questionable. But what we've seen, you know, is that they are more open now to these kinds of remote work, and then providing remote access to their system, which is actually good for us, because, you know, we have to travel less.
Yes, definitely a good type of AI startup in this period. So we have a few more minutes, and we actually have 2 questions that we can go around to each one of you to answer it. So Hajdi, there was a question on where do you look for investors when you're starting a startup, and how do you make them believe your idea is worth investing? You answered something on EU funds, but generally, how do you describe the idea so that it's worth investing?
Well, if just to go back to the first part of the question, where do you look for investors? I mean, you can either contact them on your own because you figure out which ones exist, or you ask around and you get referred by your friends, family, clients. So that is, for example, our case, the VC fund that we're talking to is from Hungary, and we were referred to them by another startup that we're in good relations with, and whose investors there as well. So there was a good referral. As for convincing them it's a good idea, I mean, I think especially if you're looking for a seed round, so where you're still trying to prove your business, that it's viable business-wise and technological-wise, I dare say that the team is something that the investors really put emphasis on, even maybe more on the idea itself, because they do have a lot of experience of those ideas pivoting and shifting and changing and adapting to the situation. But if you have a good team, if you have a good chemistry in the team, and if you have a good chemistry with the investors, and if you have really the enthusiasm that they can recognize in you, that you are willing to really work on your idea and make it a viable and successful business that can scale, that's like more than 50% of business, of getting results and convincing them that your business is the one they should invest in.
Great. So they definitely sense the effort that will be taken into. Filip, the same question. How to look for investors, or how to make them believe then that it's worth investing?
Right. So just a disclaimer, this is my first startup and I haven't yet closed the VC round. So I'm probably not the best person to talk about this. I could just give you a few data points from my experience so far. When there was some kind of prior trust between us and the potential investors, so either referral or we have worked somewhere else prior to this, or any kind of trust that's above you and a random person, these conversations tend to go smoother. And also with potential investors with domain knowledge, conversations tend to look smoother. Apart from that, once I have my third or fourth exit, I'll consider myself an expert on the topic. So far, it's just a bit of experience.
Yes, and Darko, I'd say that Corona time was really good for anybody wanting to get out, to even investors in your area of expertise in AI startups. But for you, for the end, another question. Is it better to start a venture right out of school or university, or first work in a desired industry for a couple of years? What do you think?
Well, I'm more kind of for the working first in another company before starting your own business. And I would say try to get as diversified experience as you can. So, for example, working for a large corporate, you will learn a lot about corporate governance and some techniques that you can use in a startup. But also having an experience to work for the small company, you will see, and learn a lot about, when I came from Microsoft to a small company, I didn't know how to write a sales proposal, how to issue an invoice, and all this stuff is very important when you're a startup. So I would suggest try to get, a range of experiences before going into, your own company.
Great answer for the end. So this is it. Thank you all. I was really delighted to listen to you all and meet you. And thank you for participating. We're done with the data discussion, and the audience and us may now proceed to the other link, to our keynote talk, Quantum Computing and AGI with Peter Morgan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.